Geek Therapy Radio.
How about those Astros? And no, this is not the result of Game 7 of the World Series. This is directly after Game 6 of the World Series. Never before have, even up until Game 6 in the Major League Baseball, in the NBA, and I believe the NHL, has a team ever gotten to Game 6 having only won on the road. So, in this World Series thus far, the Nationals have only won in Houston, and Houston has only won games in Washington. Every home game by both teams, the teams lost their home games. So that's the record as it stands right now. It's never been done even up until Game 6. Needless to say, if the Nationals win tomorrow, and this will be a poignant podcast to come back to in the future, but even if the Nationals win tomorrow, which I hope they don't as an Astros fan, needless to say, it's never been done in the history of at least 3 Major League sports. I am a little bit baffled, and yes, I can already tell you that at least the first few minutes or so, who knows indefinitely how long this podcast will go, being about sports, being about baseball in particular. Why does Justin Verlander play so well in the regular season and choke exclusively in the postseason? Why? It doesn't make sense for me. To me, Justin Verlander is almost exactly my age. He's around 36 years old, and he is an elite baseball player. I would say that maybe one day even a Cy Young Award winner. Can you win a Cy Young Award if you've never won a World Series? If you've never won a game in the World Series? Justin Verlander has never won a game in the World Series. And I'm going to look that up right now because this is 2019, almost 2020. Halloween is in a couple of days, which means Thanksgiving and Christmas are just around the corner. I'm going to look up right now, since it's 2019, on Google. Has a Cy Young Award winner has there been a Cy Young Award winner that has never won a World Series game? Has there been a Cy Young winner who, this is a long Google search, has never won a World Series game? Google's not even auto-completing it for me. Let's see. How smart are you, Google? Top 50 pitchers who never won a Cy Young. Okay, that doesn't help me. So there's a lot of Google searches about Justin Verlander because a lot of people are wondering, has Justin Verlander ever won a World Series game? Because you'd think he would, because he's such a great pitcher. And the answer is no. He has never won a World Series game. He made it to the 5th inning tonight, which in retrospect is also kind of puzzling because if you recall, I believe they pulled Verlander when, yes, the Nationals had a lead, but not that great of a lead. They weren't in Grand Slam territory. In baseball, I always feel like there's more hope if you're within Grand Slam territory. For those unfamiliar with baseball, Grand Slam is when the bases are loaded, all 3 bases are loaded. Then the batter, which is basically the 4th potential base runner, hits a home run, clearing the bases. So that's the person who is on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. They all score, and along with the guy who hit the home run, that's 4. So when they pulled Verlander, we still had a shot in Game 6. It was only the relievers, Peacock, who came in, was it Presley? They blew it open, so we lost 7-2. That's a 5-run lead, and as soon as you blow it open like that, and that's my definition of blow it open, is you get a 5-run lead or more, because 5 runs, there's no one swing of the bat that can tie the game up and force extra innings. When you have a 5-run lead, you really have a hole to dig out of. I don't think they should have pulled Verlander. Strasburg did amazing. He made it all the way to the 9th inning, got the first out in the 9th inning, and then they pulled him in a baffling move. Maybe they pulled him. My wife suspects that they pulled him to give him at least a little bit of rest before potentially using him tomorrow, because in Game 7 of a World Series, you will use every pitcher at your disposal, even if the person has pitched the night before. If the coach thinks that it's going to be a good move to put in a starting pitcher as a reliever or as a closer or anywhere in the game, anywhere during the game, then he will do it. Because if you extend yourself, the game to overextend yourself is Game 7 of a World Series. So if Hinch puts in Verlander in Game 7, who cares if Verlander pulls a muscle? He has the entire offseason to recover, win or lose the World Series. It's kind of like when you go skiing or snowboarding, or you're at any sort of multi-day sporting event or kind of exercise activity. You don't go, if you're skiing, you don't overexert yourself on the first day. You don't go to the stunt course. If you're snowboarding, you don't go to the half pipe, especially if you're inexperienced. You don't go do the big jumps in the half pipe and the quarter pipes and doing all the grinds and everything like that, all the ledges. You don't do that the first day. You don't drive from Houston, Texas to Colorado and then go do a half pipe on the snowboard the first day out when you haven't seen a half pipe in at least a year. You haven't had a board under your feet in at least a year. You haven't seen snow in at least a year. You don't exert yourself and risk injury the first day out. However, let's say it's the third day and all your trip provides for is 3 days of skiing or snowboarding. On that third day, after lunch on that last day is when you start attempting the things that you could break a leg. Literally break a leg, because if you break your leg at 3 p.m. the last day of skiing, you have the whole year for your leg to recover so that you can try the same crap again on the third day the next year. So that's kind of the mentality of Game 7. Put in every pitcher, every horse in your stable is at your disposal to hopefully give you the desired result, the winning result. With Strasburg, going back to Strasburg, pulling him out in the 9th inning, I think they should have just let him close it. I think they should have just let him close the game. Pitch a complete game in a World Series. Have the W, having pitched a complete game in the World Series. How much would a few extra pitches have mattered? Do you think, yes, the Astros are certainly capable of putting on a rally in the bottom of the 9th, but not the way they were playing last night. If I was the coach, I would have kept Strasburg in. Then again, interestingly enough, the Nationals coach got ejected a few innings beforehand, after the matter that he got ejected for was settled. So there was a difficult call at first base where the base runner, the batter, was running on the inside of the line to first base, which basically is interference, offensive interference for the first baseman. If you're running on the inside of the line, then the first baseman has even less of a chance of making a clean catch. It's not allowed, but it's also not a play that is reviewable. So when they didn't review the play, but the umpires had to call New York to get clarification on, I think it was something like whether or not the Nationals could officially, what is it called? They wanted to protest the game. They wanted to officially put on the record that they protest the out call at first base. So I think that's what that's what they were reviewing, not the actual call at first base. Joe Torre is the commissioner of baseball. He was there in the crowd. He could have overruled anything. He's basically the king of baseball. He kept his head down and kept out of it for good reason. Either way, the play on the field stood. The runner at first was out, which was important because that potentially saved a few runs. If the runner at first was safe, then at least 2 runs would have scored. In the end, it didn't matter because the next batter, Renton, who is from Houston, by the way. He plays on the Nationals, but he's a Houston boy. Hit a home run, 3-run homer. Went up 5-2, I believe, at that point. So that call at first base wouldn't have mattered anyways. And you would think that the matter would be settled at that point. But between innings, while the TV went to commercials, the head coach for the Nationals came back out on the field to give the first base umpire more of his mind. And he got so fired up. He got purple. This dude was purple in the face. And this guy has already had heart surgeries. He is in no position or no condition to be getting his blood pressure up that high. As a matter of fact, the announcer said that he is supposed to technically coach the games sitting down. He's not even supposed to be on his feet for that long. So he was all fired up. I'll be interested to hear his condition tomorrow. But when all was said and done, and his team had the lead by 3, 5-2, he went out between the inning to give the ump more of his mind, even though everything was said and done. It was settled. It was done. Your team had the lead, and he got ejected. What a moron! I don't mean a moron in life, but just in that instance, he let his temper, and let that be a lesson to all of us. He let his temper get the best of him, and he got ejected. I facetiously told my wife going into the commercial break that I would be surprised if nobody on the Nationals team got ejected in between innings. And I was just being facetious, like maybe one of them is stupid enough to get up there and get in the ump's face and risk ejection during the World freaking Series when you need everybody at the helm. Oh, but they did it. That's what happens when you let the temper get the best of you, is you get ejected in the World Series. In the end, it all didn't matter. The Nationals won 7-2. And I'm still trying to find, are there any Cy Young Award winners who've never won a World Series game? That's gonna be a tough stat to find. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'm gonna pause it here just for a minute. You're not gonna notice anything, but I'm gonna see if I can find that stat. Hold on one second. Okay, so I found at least one example of an answer to my question, and the example is actually Justin Verlander. He has won a World Series ring. That means he was part of the Astros in 2017 when they won the World Series. He does have a Cy Young Award, Rookie of the Year, 300 strikeouts, a no-hitter, most valuable player, and a 20-win season. So we know that Justin Verlander is not starting tomorrow night. So right now, at least one example of a Cy Young Award winner who's never won a World Series game. That's different from winning the World Series. You can be part of a team that wins a World Series. But to be a pitcher that goes ahead and stays ahead to get the W for a baseball game in the World Series and be a Cy Young Award winner, that's Verlander. He has a Cy Young Award, and to date, he will not have ever won a World Series game. That is not... I don't mean to lead on that was ever any sort of criteria to win a Cy Young Award, which started being given out in 1956, by the way. 1966 is when they started giving it to both leagues, National League and American League, as we know it now. But winning a World Series game was not at all a requirement for being awarded the Cy Young. So that is fascinating. And if Verlander falls under that category, then I would just assume that I would wager that at least half, if not most, Cy Young Award winners don't have a World Series win, a game win under their belt. They probably have plenty of rings. Justin Verlander technically has a ring, but so does Bob Elliott, the producer for the Astros radio network here in Houston, and he's never played for the Houston Astros. He runs the radio station, and we had to fight to get him a World Series ring. He's been doing Astros games for over 20 years, 25 years, 30, maybe even going on 30 years, and it was kind of appalling that everybody, here's the thing, almost everybody in the Astros organization gets a World Series ring when their team wins the World Series. Not just the Astros, any baseball team that wins the World Series, almost everybody involved with the organization, with the office, so to speak, gets a World Series ring. So when Houston won the World Series in 2017 and Bob Elliott did not get a World Series ring, that was kind of an abomination. And long story short, Bob definitely got a World Series ring. Another fascinating thing that's popping into my head having to do with the World Series, in particular the Astros, in 2017, this is not uncommon for any other baseball team, but a certain wine company, don't ask me what wine company, but a wine company issued a special bottle of Astros World Series wine to commemorate the 2017 World Series win, which is the first time, and so far the only time, as of, well, it just turned midnight here, as of October 30th, it is the only time, I shouldn't say that, as of October 29th, the Astros have not won another World Series. 2017 is their only World Series. Since it's technically, as I'm speaking right now, October 30th, they play later today in Game 7. So anyways, this wine was issued in 2017, and my coworker Nico bought a bottle of the wine, and he made a promise to himself, as I'm sure a lot of other people have, and it's very meaningful, that they are not going to open that 2017 World Series wine until the next time the team wins the World Series. So Nico is he was telling me today he was kind of surprised that he didn't plan on even entertaining the idea of opening that bottle of wine for several years, if not decades, let alone just 2 years after the first time the Astros won a World Series. Just like pour me a glass of wine also from that bottle. The longer the Astros go without winning a World Series, the more the wine ages. But you know what? I don't think that's very important. I will drink wine that isn't as aged if it means that the Astros can win another World Series if they win tomorrow. There's a lot on the line tomorrow, and I do realize that this Geek Therapy Radio podcast has turned into a sports podcast, but that's what's going on right now. And to let you guys behind the curtain, guys and gals behind the curtain, as I am one to do on this show, as I love to do on this show, and break the fourth wall and show you guys how the sausage is made, I am quite a bit of a geek about baseball. Shall I regale you for a moment? I shall. I shan't hold it from you. One of the few things that my dad and I had in common was baseball. One of the few things that we could actually bond over. The first thing we could bond over was music, and I am eternally thankful that my dad and I had such a strong bond over music. Because as you know, fathers and sons, they have kind of an awkward relationship, especially during the teenage years when the son is a teenager. It gets real awkward. I'll save that story for another time. It's very awkward. So even in the throes of teenage awkwardness, in between, like, I would say 13 to, 18 years old, I was awkward around my dad. Music, no awkwardness. We could have not talked to each other for weeks, and he would just pop his head up above the railing in the upstairs and say, "Hey, you want to go to Austin tomorrow? Go to Antone's?" Yeah. And that's the only thing we would have said to each other for weeks. So the next day after school, we'd get in his Volkswagen and we'd drive to Austin to go to Antone's for nothing in particular other than a blues jam. Antone's has lots of impromptu blues nights, blues jams. And here's the thing about blues jams at Antone's. They weren't just random people. Word would get out to the legends. And if you showed up to a blues jam at Antone's on 5th Street, 5th and Lavaca, I believe Antone's was. If you showed up to a random blues jam night, it could be some of the guys from Fastball, it could be Willie Nelson, it could be Doyle Bremmel, It could be Chris Layton. It could be, oh geez, I struggle to name a few, name them all, because it's just basically anybody could show up there. Just legends. If Eric Clapton was in town, if Eric Clapton was anywhere within Texas, you would fully expect it, not be surprised to see him at just an impromptu blues jam session at Antone's. And Antone's is not a huge venue. It is not very big at all. It is a dive bar. It's small, and it's clean, dirty. It has to pass health inspection, but it is not a place that, if you went up there and asked for a martini, they would probably laugh at you. Oh, get the hell out of here. Here's a beer. Get away from the. What are you doing asking for a martini? It's that type of place. So if you happen to be there on a night that Willie Nelson was there, or Eric Clapton, or whoever was there, you literally reach out and touch them. They are that close, and it is that type of establishment. It is. So many legends have gone through there. Stevie Ray Vaughan used to play there all the time. It is a landmark. It is a legend. It is a place that lives and breathes and has a life of its own. It's an organism. So yeah, my dad would randomly ask. I'm sorry if you hear Jack meowing in the background. He is the ruiner of everything. We would just go to Antone's and have a good time, and there was no awkwardness. It was just a bonding experience. So how does that relate to baseball? Well, the other thing we had in common, like I mentioned before, was baseball. To somewhat of a lesser extent, I would say, than my father and I's personal bond over music. Something that he shared with all of his sons, his 4 sons, was baseball, and in particular the Red Sox. So I grew up my entire life playing baseball. I played baseball nonstop every season until I was at least 18 years old, and I was pretty decent at baseball. I started on the varsity team, and I lettered in it, and I was okay. I was not a great batter. My eyes were just too terrible to be a good batter, but I was a good defenseman. I was a good outfielder. I played third base, and I would play third, second, outfield. Nobody wanted to test my gun, so to speak. But when I did connect to the ball, it usually would go out. I would get extra bases, and sometimes during batting practice, they would just pitch to me to watch me hit home runs. At a good stroke, as it were, I just had terrible control. That said, when my school, I went to a private school, and one might think, oh, private school, that means their baseball team sucked. No. We're here in Texas. The private school meant that the parents of all the baseball players... Sorry, I just scared Jack away. Parents of the baseball players, not my parents, but other baseball players, other kids on the team, they paid for private coaching and all that. So these players were good. It would not be a stretch of the imagination to assume that at least 2 or 3 players, even on the small private school team, were on steroids. I don't think that is strange at all. I guarantee, I don't know if any of my old teammates listen to this show, but there are probably some that would they probably would never admit, but if you looked at their body type during high school and the way it kind of stunted their growth now as adults, yeah, I would say that at least a couple that I can think of were probably juicing. And I would be happy to be wrong. And hopefully I am completely wrong about that. But anyways, our first game, we played mostly really good schools. We would play scrimmage games against the college team. They would beat us, of course. They were a few years older than us and completely jacked. But we would scrimmage against them anyways, and we held our own for sure. But our first official game of the season, the first year that NCAA had a baseball team, we were the Warriors, and nobody had a hit yet. I remember that, what's his name? Chris Matt, I think, had walked and maybe stolen a base, or were there 2 walks? there was at least a man on second. Chris Matt was on second base. So I was third or fourth in the lineup because, again, I would hit pretty well during practice. So I guess at that time, first game, they thought I was at least, cleanup, worthy of being a cleanup batter. And it worked very well in the very first game because I got up there, no one had a hit yet. There was nobody on the books yet for getting a hit in the entire school history. If you go back in our school's history into the records and see the first hit for NCAA baseball, it's going to say Johnny Hemberger, a stand-up double. And I regret, first RBI as well. It allowed Chris Matt to score at least one RBI, if not two. Stand-up double, and the only regret I have from that is that I half-assed the swing. I just tried to connect with it, and I did, and it went flying over the center fielder's head. Hence the stand-up double. And I was like, oh man, like maybe 10 feet from the fence. I was like, if I had put even just a slight bit of power behind that swing rather than just a good stroke to connect with the ball, if I put any power behind it, not only would I have the first hit in the first RBIs, I would have the first home run as well. That's the only regret. If I go back in time, I would tell myself just little conscience, hey, next pitch, swing a little bit harder on this one. It was just a little bit outside, a little high, and just a little bit outside, right where I like it. I would say maybe middle. Not too high, not too low, just middle, but a little bit outside so I could have the reach, where I could get the full momentum of the swing, the full, just the full power of the swing. Yeah. I like thinking about that. There's nothing, every sport has their unique feel, like it feels good to do certain things. Where you connect with the ball or the puck or what have you, or the football exits your hand just right. Or if you're playing soccer, you kick it just right, and you just know off of your foot from the moment it touches your foot that it's going to have the perfect curve to it, and it's going to arc around the goalie just past his finger. Like, you just know off your foot that, this is a good connection right here. Baseball is very much similar. You know instantaneously when you hit the ball whether it was good or bad. When you get the good pitch and it hits the barrel of the bat just right, it's called a no-doubter. It feels so good in your hands. That just perfect, blissful transfer of energy into the ball. That's what a home run feels like. And you know it. That's why batters, when you see in Major League Baseball, they look cocky by the way they hit the ball, and they just kind of stand there and watch it, because they know that it's out. It's a no-doubter. They knew from the nanosecond that ball was touching the bat. They could feel it in the palms of their hands and in their fingertips wrapped around the handle of the bat. They know when they hit it from that split second that it's gone. They know it. It's the no-doubter. Bregman hit a no-doubter grand slam a couple days ago. Another home run tonight. And he held on to his bat forever, which was kind of silly while I was doing that. He held the bat all the way to first base. I was like, he's going to get called out for that or ejected or something. Why is he holding his bat all the way to first base? You're supposed to get rid of your bat within a stride or two. You're not ever supposed to hold on to the bat. Really, you're supposed to let go of the bat immediately. That's what we're taught. Playing ball all through the years is don't hold on to the bat. One time I hit the catcher with my baseball bat on accident, and I felt real bad. When was it? I think it was, I think I was 17, and I signed up late for the city league, and I wound up, I think I was a year older than almost anybody else on the team. I wasn't the biggest on the team at all. The catcher was the biggest dude on the team, but for some reason it was practice. It was practice. And for some reason I was in this habit. You get into habits as a baseball player, as any sort of athlete. You get into bad form, and that's kind of one reason why people don't like to, they'll stop practicing, they'll call it quits, or they'll stop what they're doing immediately if they feel that they're getting into a bad habit They try to shake it off and not put it into muscle memory. But for that season, for a couple months, I had gotten to this, I call it the Ken Griffey stroke. I got into this Ken Griffey habit where Ken Griffey Jr. would not hold on to the bat all the way through his stroke. He would get to the middle of the plate, the barrel would cross the middle plane of the plate, and he would let go with his right hand and pull the bat the rest of the way through with his left hand. Or was he a left-handed batter? Either way, he would let go of the bat with one of his hands and basically pull it through the plate with one hand. And the result of that usually is that the baseball bat's heavy and will carry and will pull your arm around and reach way far back behind you. So I was in that kind of groove with my Ken Griffey stroke, and I just reached back, my bat went back way too far behind me, my massive stroke, and I hit the catcher in the shoulder. It happens all the time. It's not that uncommon in baseball for the batter to accidentally hit the catcher. It's nothing on purpose. Every catcher who's ever caught in baseball has been hit by the extension of a batter's swing from time to time. It just happens. Sometimes they get clocked across the face mask. It's one reason why they wear all the pads, not just because of the baseball, but because the person in front of you is swinging a big hunk of lumber or metal or aluminum or whatever, and you don't want to be hit by that, so they're wearing all the padding. So I felt so bad. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. It was the big redheaded kid. I know if I asked my brother, because we played in the same leagues and the same teams and everything, and we played with this kid since Little League, since T-ball. This is one of those kids who looked like a teenager in second grade. Like, this kid was a monster, just a monster. He had red hair. I wouldn't call him fat, but he was just one of those massive, massive kids. I think he eventually started playing football for a good reason. But he was a good baseball player too. Tons of power. Just unending power in his swing. This kid could jack home runs all day long in batting practice without even breaking a sweat. What was his freaking name? Anyways, I hit him and I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry, dude. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Because he went down. Yeah, I actually hurt him and I felt so bad. But he got up, he shook it off. It was fine. There was no hard feelings, but I felt really bad. And that was the baseball podcast. I had no idea I was going to talk for over 30 minutes now about baseball. But here we are. I'm all fired up because of the World Series and Game 6 having just occurred, and really wanting the Astros to win Game 7. And just the history that's on the line, the stats that are on the line, that if the Astros lose, then no other team in at least 3 leagues of sports history has ever lost every game at home. That's a very interesting stat. We're going to see how it goes tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow when I record, I might have some good news. I think the game's a little bit earlier tomorrow. Anyways, thanks for listening. Please know, above all else, that you are worthy of love, that you are loved, that you are worthy of giving love. Please be good to yourselves and others. Know that we are all geeks about something. Yes, even you, whether it's cars or baseball or art or playing video games or what have you. We're all geeks about something. Electronics, anything. And that's something to celebrate. So until tomorrow, be good, my geeks, and I'll talk to you later.
Geek Therapy Radio, Saturday night at 10 on KPRC 950. Or listen anytime on our iHeartRadio app.